I'm in St. Louis, preparing to, as it turns out, play in the Rapid and Blitz, and probably also in the Sinquefield Cup. Due to obvious issues with travel, getting everybody to the States is proving to be a bit of a challenge. So I was originally supposed to do commentary on these events, and will now be playing. Foxubu. The info on who will play is, for now, I'm not going to be able to do that because, as I mentioned, this has been an extraordinarily difficult period. Obviously, as you all well know, it's not easy. It's not easy to travel. It's the regulations vary from country to country, and it is, as we have figured out by testing, it is easier to get to the States from Russia than from some other countries. So I'm here, but who else will will eventually play is, for now, slightly up in the air. I'm sure the press release will be coming soon from the Grand Chess Tour organizers, but I would like to ask for patience, because this isn't done to keep you in the dark. This is very much force majeure type situation. But whoever ends up playing is going to be a very strong tournament. I think there will be a very strong contingent of American players, obviously, because for them getting to St. Louis is nowhere near as tricky as for foreigners. And the American players these days are extremely strong, as I have had occasion to experience recently in the World Cup. So going to be a very strong tournament, but the exact lineup is still not entirely decided, so I can't really tell you. Because of that, it's kind of hard to preview what will be happening here. But if you have questions regarding the tournaments in St. Louis, whatever I can tell you, I will tell you. But there are still things which are somewhat undecided. Will I be playing in the Grand Swiss? I think there was a question about the Grand Swiss. I'm not entirely sure. There are, I would like to, but I'm not 100% certain. There are, once again, some things are slightly up in the air. So the answer for now is Grand Swiss is a fantastic tournament. I would like to play, but I don't know exactly. I just complimented Sam for beating me. I'm neither confirming nor denying he is playing in any of the St. Louis events. Rhythm 17. I'm already in St. Louis. So because of this whole situation, the amount of things I can say about the St. Louis tournaments, apart from, I've played in a number of them, and I also covered a number of them for the club. They're always great fun to play, always very well organized. Looking forward to playing in them. They start in a couple of days' time. Openings are tomorrow. Irene is rating us with 400 people. Thank you very much for the rain, Irene, and I hope you're okay. I hope you're feeling better. And it was very nice meeting you in Sochi, and thanks very much for the raid, and welcome to the raiders. So yeah, the tournaments start in a couple of days' time. There's going to be 5 days of Rapid and Blitz. Then there's a break, I think, for 1 day for an opening ceremony, and then immediately afterwards, everybody launches into the Sinquefield Cup, which is also going to be an incredibly strong field, of course. So yeah, lots of chess ahead. For which I am, as usual, somewhat unprepared, but I haven't really felt prepared for a tournament in a number of years, so, absolutely business as usual. We're not worried here. And as for the structure of today's stream, it's going to be kind of similar to what we normally do. I will solve some puzzles together with you guys. I will give you time to think, and I will take answers from chat. I have 4 sets of puzzles prepared. And then I will play the members for the rest of the 2-hour slot. We are planning to do a 2-hour stream today. I never know exactly how much time the puzzles will take. They are, some of them are trickier than others, and I haven't, in order to be, as fresh as possible, I haven't even looked at the puzzles yet. I've loaded them all up to have them ready so that you don't have to watch me clicking around, but I haven't looked at a single position for more than 3 seconds, and I don't know how tricky they are. Did you watch Olympics? I've watched some of the Olympics, but not a lot of it. The vibe is just like, first of all, I'm not a very, dedicated Olympics watcher at the best of time, but also this year, the vibe is just very strange. And for somebody like me who, watches sporadically at the best of times, I just didn't feel like I needed to. So yeah, let's start with the solving. Let me switch to a different outlook. So this is the website, as you all know, and I have them loaded in other windows, but if you go to learn, you see master lessons here, and there's a great number of very, very good lessons. And today we will be doing 2 sets of puzzles, 2 from a lesson by Simon Williams, the Ginger himself, and 2 recorded by Maurice Ashley, who I was very much looking forward to working together when I get here, but this will now have to wait, sadly. Working with Yaz and Maurice was going to be a lot of fun. I kind of missed them. So yeah, we start with the Simon Williams' set on X-ray attacks. An X-ray attack is where a piece, my definitions of tactical motifs are not very good even in Russian language, and they definitely aren't great in English, but an extra attack is where a piece of yours, normally I would associate it with queens and bishops in particular, sort of controls a square through an opponent's piece. And we already have a correct solution in chat for this one, and this will allow me to illustrate on a board what it means. We have this pin along the 7th, and we would like to attack the knight on f7, but currently the pawn on g6 is in the way. And in order to break through, we go rook takes g6, queen takes g6, and now we use the fact that the queen on h5 is still sort of in touch with the f7 knight through the queen on g6, and we go rook takes f7, and now we can play, I assume, rook g7 check, queen takes g7, and here I would very much like to play queen takes e8, but I think queen f8 is actually going to save material for black. So I will just be extremely materialistic and just pick up this queen on g7. I think it's simpler and more straightforward. So yeah, that's the first puzzle. And let's get to the next one, and I will give you a better opportunity to solve it without me actually clicking on pieces extremely fast. So let's take a look at this. This is... Does the e-pawn not roll? We can actually go back there and look at that final position again. If people have questions about how winning this position is, I honestly asked myself the same question. My king falls, but for now the rook on e8 is hanging, and black really does not have time to start pushing. For the time being, the rook has to go somewhere. Then the bishop will come back to e5. Attacking the rook on d6, also stopping the run of the e4 pawn towards the queening square. And the king on g8 is so weak that I don't think we have to worry. So yeah, this position. it's clearly a Sicilian of some sort. It's harder to say. It's difficult to say with more precision what kind of a Sicilian this is, because this really could be from a number of lines. The pawn on g5 kind of indicates it might be some kind of a Keres attack Sicilian, but these days white plays g4, g5 in basically every single Sicilian. So that's not really enough of an indication. And because this is an X-ray attack themed collection of positions, I'm looking to involve my bishops in some way, but I don't quite see it yet. And honestly, it's kind of interesting because I've been staring at this position for the last minute, and I'm absolutely no closer to even the first move of the solution. I'm looking at rook e4 as an idea to attack the bishop on e2, but that does not seem like a particularly effective way to win, because I think queen f3 exists, but I have no better ideas at all. So, you know, if I were to solve this move by move, I would actually start by playing rook e4, and then just I would like to watch what the machine does against me, because very often, this is kind of what I'm going to describe here is kind of cheating, but when you solve these types of puzzles, very often what you think is the biggest problem with the move you're about to propose is not what the algorithm will ask you to refute. So you can sort of save on brain power a little bit by just making the first move and waiting for the algorithm to make a reply. And yeah, Joe root 4 is good. Yeah, I was about to say that I enjoy those two innings very much, and then I thought we've already discussed this, Nizahir. Why are you bringing this up? But the issue is, like, I honestly don't know how you refute queen f3, but I also don't know what else I'm supposed to play here. Maybe rook f8, but then the queen can go to g2. Yeah, we'll see. I think rook e4 is sort of a consensus solution here, that we have to start with rook e4 at least. Even though I still don't exactly know how that wins. And the question from Ufix 1207, did I meet Vidit during the World Cup? We had dinner more than once, yeah, because we lived in at the same hotel, and had dinner at the same restaurant, because dinner for chess players was at a very specific place. Like if you asked for full board was at one specific restaurant. So we shared dinner more than once. I like Vidit a great deal. He's a very, very nice guy. So let's go rook e4 and see what happens. Queen f3. Now I'm beginning to kind of wonder if maybe we can play some sort of rook takes d2 ideas, but they also don't seem that clear at all. My issue with rook f8 here is that I don't see how we refute queen h5. This is currently my biggest problem with playing rook f8. Otherwise, rook f8 would be instantly winning. But I don't, for the time being, I don't know exactly how I'm supposed to refute queen h5. So let's take a look at this again and see if we're missing some kind of a more straightforward idea. Queen f4 just blunders the queen, right? That doesn't seem right. Rook takes d2 definitely makes some sense, but after rook d2, bishop g5, white starts giving checks. If we go to a7, queen c5 begins. I don't think this is clean. I think, like, in a classical game, I would definitely spend some time calculating the move rook d2, but I think I would come to the conclusion that it's not clean enough and it shouldn't be the move to make here. So apart from rook f8, there's also queen h2 maybe, but that also feels like it's just not straightforward enough. Rook g2 is no rook g2. Maybe rook takes c2 wins. Is c3 complete? No, I was actually looking at c3. In every single position I was trying to make c3 work, but I don't understand how we refute bishop takes c3, at least not straight away. I just don't. Once again, I'm struggling to land the finishing blow there after the very simple recapture. Is it actually queen h2, rook g2, rook e2, I wonder? Let's try this. I actually got there sort of by the process of elimination, but this is a very, very tough puzzle. This is a very tough puzzle. And we end up, after everything gets traded, the final very important part of the solution is the fact that we can use the pin on the d file to win even more material. And this pawn ending with our 3 passers on the king side is, of course, very, very easily winning after we trade everything on the g2 square. But the sequence of queen h2 followed by rook takes e2 is very, very complicated to spot, I think. And yeah, it's a kind of a complicated puzzle for somebody who hasn't really warmed up yet. And another question which we don't really get to see the answer to is, after queen h2, how does white lose after rook ge1? Which was another issue for me when I was sort of considering playing queen h2 in this position, because there is no immediate straightforward way, at least none that I can see, that ends the game after rook g1. Perhaps c4, c3 wins. Maybe this is the position in which c3, the move Sleepy Mario suggested slightly earlier. Maybe this is the position where c3 wins, because we distract the bishop from this diagonal, go bishop takes g5 check, and end up winning some material. But none of this is straightforward at all. So yeah, a difficult puzzle, and I'm happy we actually solved it. Yeah, if rook g1, rook d2, bishop g5. Once again, I'm very, very concerned about queen f8, queen c5, queen d6 type counterplay. In a practical game, I would be extremely worried about allowing any of those checks to happen on the board, because you might actually allow a perpetual by doing this. Moving on, because I think we should quit while we're ahead here. We solved it, we're happy. Maybe the next one is simpler. I'm not living in St. Louis, but I am currently in St. Louis because I will be playing in both the Rapid and Blitz and the Sinquefield Cup instead of commentating on them as I originally supposed. This is clearly a Caro-Kann position. You can recognize it by the bishop on h7 and white sacrificing. You can sort of, I can even tell you sort of which line this is. It's the knight c3, d4, knight e4, bishop f5, knight g3, bishop g6 type position, which has gone horribly, horribly wrong for black, obviously, because the king side is getting completely destroyed. And our first choice here is quite obvious. If we go in this direction, we are allowing bishop d3 check. There is no way we should be allowing bishop d3 check, of course, so we start by playing king h1. And this is another thing that I wanted to mention, and this is not really about puzzle solving. I did, suggest a bit of a life hack earlier regarding solving puzzles, but this is not about solving puzzles. If you have this position in a practical game, actually, it makes perfect sense to not even try to calculate what happens after king h1, because you just know that king f1 is wrong. So it's important not to spend, in a practical game in particular, when you solve puzzles, a purist will tell you that you're supposed to actually work out the entire solution in your head before you move any pieces. But in a practical game, I would suggest that just instantly playing king h1 here, because you know you're playing king h1 in every single case. So just time management absolutely requires you to make these moves as quickly as possible. And now after knight f8, yeah, this one I can see. The previous one I wasn't sure where the x-ray was coming from, but in this one I know why it's in the x-ray bunch of puzzles, because black has a very, very boxed in king on g8, but the move knight f8 does a very good job of both connecting the queen on c7 to the pawn on f7, and also creating an additional piece which controls the g6 square, meaning that we can not just play, let's say, queen g5 check, bishop g6, and queen takes g6 mate, which we would have done because of the pin if the knight wasn't there. But the knight is there, controlling that square. we can't do that. And yeah, Sleepy Mario is correct with both the solution and the explanation for why an X-ray was in the title of the previous one. If we take the horse as my king falls here, I think the move might be sort of good enough to still preserve advantage, but a lot of pieces will start getting traded after, for instance, rook takes e6. And there's a very direct solution here which leads to either immediate mate or a win of tremendous amount of material. And it's kind of similar to the first position that we were solving, actually, where the queen on h5 was using an X-ray to control something through the opponent's queen. So we take on f7 here, and in this position we take on e8, using the fact that we are still controlling the e8 square with the queen. And of course, if black takes on h5 here, we have rook takes f8 mate. Next move, and if black does something like bishop g6 or bishop f5, we will simply take on f8 and win. As I mentioned, we win a lot of material in all of those positions. So resigning here is definitely not unreasonable. Next puzzle. This one, anybody has any strong ideas on which opening this is from? I would offer a draw in this position. Yeah, this is a kind of a running joke in a particular Facebook community or chess community, Russian-speaking chess community. I think I told that story in one of the streams, but I'm not sure if that was on this channel or some other channel. Yeah, it's definitely an IMSO. I'm pretty sure it's not an IMSO type thing. It's specifically an IMSO. Probably you can even name a line, although the specific line is harder to name. Yeah, it's the Rauf story. Offering a draw here should be accepted gleefully by any white player in this position, because black is very much ahead. I think I know the solution, but I will let you think for a bit. This is Kasparovchess, Hateti 64 or Haiti. I don't really know. Oh, it's the Hearthstone player. Yeah, very much so. Diversifying a little bit. My Hearthstone career isn't really taking off as much as I kind of hoped, so I am now trying my head at variety streaming. So for the time being, our pieces look very beautiful, but we can't seem to, create a final threat. That's very harsh, Lida. My feelings are incredibly hurt. But it is correct though, so hard to argue with facts. But that's very harsh. So if you take on h3 straight away, the issue is the queen can come to h2 after white recaptures, so you don't actually get to deliver mate that way. And you need to create an additional threat here. And the weak point you could attack, and there's already a suggestion in chat on that topic. The weak point you could attack is the pawn on g2. Thanks very much for the sub, Lida. Or you could play rook h6, which is also something that got mentioned in chat. But I think the issue with the move rook h6 specifically is that white will take on d5, creating an obvious threat of rook takes e8 with mate. And black will have to get very, very badly distracted by those threats, because not only is the rook hanging, if you trade rooks on e3 after rook h6, e5, you have to deal with the threat of rook e8 mate anyway, because black has no luft for the king anywhere on the king side. So you have to pay attention to this specific source of counterplay with e takes d5. And because of that, I think you need to First of all, if we return to the general theme of the puzzles, there's definitely an X-ray theme here that you can see, I hope. But then you have to kind of visualize where you want this rook to be on the board after you land your X-ray related tactic. Unfortunately, Ritesh, I can't really move. Like if I make a wrong first move, the algorithm will just tell me that my move is wrong, and I can't really move the piece. I would explain, or at least attempt to explain to you why ed5 rook f8 doesn't work, but we can't do it in this mode. 93 is a very, very sensible move, but I don't think it wins. It's a nice move, but it's a move that probably gives black an advantage, but I don't think it ends the game on the spot. What I think does end the game on the spot is the move rook g6. That's actually incorrect. That's pretty cool. I was so sure I was right about this. That's kind of funny. I guess it must be rook h6 then. Which is curious to me because I really thought rook g6 was stronger. I'm a bit surprised by this, honestly. But okay, let's go rook h6. And now we take on e1. This is the X-ray motif that I was talking about. We can take on e1 here. Go rook takes e1. And now I guess we go rook e2. My reasoning for liking rook g6 instead of rook h6 here was that if we get to this position and the rook is already on g6, we just take on g2 and win on the spot, right? But we can play rook e2, and after queen f5, we have rook takes h3 using the pin. It's actually important not to take on g2 here, because if you take on g2 and allow king h1, I suspect black might be lost because of the threat of queen c8 mate and also the knight hanging. So you have to play rook h3, but rook h3 does win. This is a very simply convertible advantage for us. Yeah, I guess there's some very strong defense after rook g6, but I just don't see it. I spent some time trying to visualize what white would be playing after rook g6, and I couldn't find anything. If you play rook g1, I think knight takes h3 wins very comfortably. If you go rook g2, king h1, rook h3, white takes on h3, knight takes on h3, and king takes g2, and the knight actually gets picked up because it has no squares, skylex. I am actually pretty sure black is in desperate trouble in this position if you don't play rook takes h3. And with that, we come to the final position in the set. This has been a very challenging set, and we're half an hour into the stream, and we are barely solving the first set by Simon. Rook cd8 is the move here, and that's curious. I want to play c5, queen d5, bishop c4. I'm pretty sure it's actually c5, queen d5, bishop c4. I am sort of jumping the gun here a little bit because of how slow we were getting to this point. Queen h5 definitely is a promising move you have to check, but I think queen f8 covers everything, both the f7 square and the h6 square, and we don't have a particularly strong follow-up. But I like this, and after queen d5, we're using a very kind of a convoluted X-ray here, if that's a way to describe it, by playing bishop c4, and after rook takes d1. Rook takes d1 is not very challenging, but of course the point is, if black takes on c4, we can take on c4, and if finally all of the black pieces vacate the d file, we land the move rook takes d8 with decisive effect. And after rook takes d1, it's very very simple. We just take on d5, take on e6, and we deliver mate in a few moves. This is not... I think this puzzle is actually way simpler than some of the ones we solved earlier. So yeah, that is the X-ray attack set by Simon Williams done. This is expert level, so fairly complicated, and honestly some of them were very complicated even for me. And we're moving on to the set by the same author on the topic of attraction. And here we start with this position where you can't see the text on the left because this is the overlay we're using, but it says a beautiful game by Russian Grandmaster Yan Nepomniachtchi is complemented by a pretty study with a solution premised on the theme of attraction. And we start by assessing what's happening here to begin with. Black has just played knight h5 f4. Queen g2 is threatened, queen h3 is threatened, and obviously black is intending to meet ef with rook e2. But we don't really have a choice. We have to play ef because allowing queen takes h3 just doesn't feel right at all. And yeah, I think you're right. I still don't quite see how we... I understand it now. We actually get to lure the black king to a bad square more than once in that sequence. So we start by doing this, and after rook e2, currently the pawn on h6 looks very threatening, but queen takes f2 check looks like a much more relevant threat. It's actually going to be mate in 2 if we allow it. But we can make the pawn on h6 work for us by playing rook d8 check, and then rook h8 check, which is a very, very typical motif of absolutely forcing your opponent's king onto a square where we can progress our pawn towards the queening square with check. I wonder exactly how simple it is to refute king g6. I assume we start by playing queen d6 check, and then after f6 something bad will happen to black. But considering the fact that king takes h8 I think allows like mate in 5 with checks, I would probably in a practical game prefer to try king g6. But the algorithm wants us to do the beautiful thing here, so we'll do the beautiful thing. hg, and it seems like black has actually won right after king h7 because there are no checks for us and queen f2 is still coming. But you know, we just invested a full rook into getting this pawn to g7, and now we're going to give it away just to be able to play queen d8 check, and then the usual geometric motif of giving a check from h8, then giving a check from f6, getting the king to either h7 or h5, and then giving mate on one of the g7, g5 squares is going to be very easy to see. Yeah, queen g6 f5 probably is even smarter because yeah, the h pawn will win in the endgame. That's a good spot by Sleepy Mario actually. Next one, please. I have a feeling I've seen this diagram. It's a very I have a feeling I know where this is from, but I can't recall immediately. And the trick here is to try to solve the entire thing, because I think the first move, because of, you know, we know what the general theme of these position is. The first move should be easy to spot, but I don't quite understand how we land the final blow. So considering we are kind of running a bit slower than ideal today, let's start by making what we assume is the right move here. We have a bishop on a2, which isn't really doing very much, but it's kind of looking very meaningfully in this direction. So we would like to include it in the game, and to include it in the game, we go rook takes, well, I mean, that was clearly a misclick. We go rook f7, and then using the pin, we go queen f5 check. But yeah, this is where I got stuck. I don't quite understand how we are supposed to give mate here, because if we take with the bishop, black can play something like queen b7, and I don't know, maybe queen h7 wins. Maybe this is how you're actually supposed to go here, although it is then very, very non-standard. But the point is, like, normally I think autopilot you would play queen takes e6 here. But then after knight e7, the only check we have is from here. The king goes here, and we start running out of checks because the king is, you know, very much headed towards safety around like c7, b8 squares. So I have a feeling we are actually supposed to start with this. And after queen a7, bishop takes g8 is way, way too pedestrian for our tastes, I think. I think we need to play faster, because bishop g8, while probably quite strong, doesn't really create a winning threat, whereas queen takes h7 definitely does create a winning threat here. And after queen e7, what will be the finishing blow here? I'm very tempted to play queen g6 check and then bishop g5, but I don't know if that's best. Does feel very, very promising. The issue here is if we take on g8 with check, black will play queen f8, attacking both our queen and the bishop on f4 with check. And although we have some ways of not allowing the immediate queen trade, it feels like there must be a more effective solution here. And I think that more effective solution is actually to play queen g6 check and then bishop g5, attacking the queen on e7. Now, because the queen is hanging, we also have queen f5 check in case of queen e8. It feels like we are going to either win a lot of material or give mate here. Queen g8, queen g8, queen f8, bishop f7 check. I think the king goes to d7, not e7, and it gets a bit messy. I have a feeling white is still winning there, fair dessert, but white is not winning as quickly as we would like. I think queen g6 is just more effective. I'm not claiming queen takes g8 doesn't win at all. I am claiming that this solution is faster and more precise. All right. So what's happening here? This is, if we look at the starting position, this could be a French, this could be, I guess, maybe some type of London. The bishop on g3, I think, makes it very, very possible that this is some sort of a London. And queen takes d5 is an unbelievably optimistic move here. I just want to say that if you ever have a position like this with white, with the king still on e1, being pinned by the rook, and you can castle, and instead of castling, despite castling being very much available, you choose to spend the tempo on queen takes d5, you deserve everything that comes after that. Sort of just remember that you did this to yourself type of thing, because the king needs to be evacuated to safety. Having said all that, the refutation here is very forceful, and probably the only way to refute this. And what Sleepy Mario is saying is, once again, he is very much on fire today. Any serious hacker plays rook takes e2 here just for aesthetics sake. Exactly, yeah, you kind of need to keep the king in the center, and very, very forcefully keeping it in the center by taking on e2 and giving bishop a6 check is the first part. And now in this position, my original idea was to play rook e8 check, but maybe there is something even cleaner connected with some knight before ideas. I'm actually somewhat unsure how to win this in the cleanest way possible. It could be that we actually play a quiet move like rook d8 here. I really don't want to include bishop takes g3 nihilistic, specifically because after h takes g3, we will then have to calculate bishop takes h7 at every single point. And giving white any sort of reliable counterplay it just doesn't feel right here. I honestly think it might be rook d8, because if we play rook d8 here, if we just sort of think about that position for a second, we play rook d8, we have protected our bishop on d6, we've created a very strong threat of bishop takes g3, followed by rook takes d5. We don't have to worry about rook a d1 or rook h d1, because our knight is protecting the rook on d8, so we can still play bishop takes g3, and nothing really is hanging. And if the queen goes anywhere after rook d8, we will be able to play bishop takes c4, keeping the king in the center. And this is a very, very big point of why I don't like rook e8 check anymore. Because rook e8 check is basically forcing white to make the best move in the position, which is king e2 f1, running towards safety somewhere around the g1 square. Queen e7 is... The issue with queen e7, Neil, I think, is exactly the same. We don't want to be forcing white to make the correct move. White's real problem, and maybe even the only problem white has in this position, is the king on e2, and we need to be exploiting it instead of helping white evacuate this king to safety. So I will go rook d8. b3 I did not expect, but maybe it's the best choice white has. And now we're going to take on g3, and algorithm is going to say well done, I assume, because both queen h5 and queen f5 can be met by g7, g6, attacking the queen and not allowing queen takes h7 check. Why b3? Sort of for the reasons that I described. If the queen goes anywhere at all, bishop takes e4 is almost mate, because the king will never be able to run to f1, and then we will chase it down along the e-file. And it's, I mean, b3 is not a move you make, you know, with any kind of an enjoyment, but it might be the best move, which maybe the only move that sort of doesn't immediately get mated or loses even more material. Next one, please. This feels like some kind of Caracan/French type position. And it also feels like we are supposed to be starting by playing bishop takes h4, because this is a set of puzzles that deals specifically with attraction. But what's the follow-up? Can anyone tell me what the follow-up is? Because I think I know what the follow-up is, but it's I want you guys to also spot what the point is. AK Pilot says rook d8 is a very hard move to find. Yeah, it's not easy, and I am sort of breezing through these exercises a little bit. You know, if we had more time, I would have been, I would be giving you more, you know, more of a chance to spot those difficult decisions. But we are sort of halfway through, or at least halfway through what I expected to go through, and we are 45 minutes in. So if we are to have any time at all to play later, I wanted to speed things up a bit. I'm pretty sure it is actually g5. There's already, I think, 5 people who say g5, and I'm pretty sure this is correct. And the point there is, if we take on h4, after king takes h4, f7 is currently hanging as somebody correctly identified. So we don't have time to play something like queen g2 and keep the white king on the side of the board. We need to continue forcefully opening files, which is why we play g5 here, to include the rook in the game by opening the g file. So we go gf, after king f2, I assume we go f takes e. That's actually incorrect. That's very curious. I did not actually solve the entire thing before. I mean, I assumed f e was going to be correct, but if it's not, then what is? Maybe we go something like rook 5 d7? Just to stop queen takes f7, and then we pick up the issue with rook g8 here. I also thought about rook g8, but the issue with rook g8 is that white probably has a perpetual after queen f7, at least a perpetual. Rook g7, queen h5 check, and then queen e8 check. So yeah, I think it's rook 5 d7. And then we can take the bishop or play rook g8 next move. And rook 5 d7 is once again not a very easy move to find, but it's, I think you find it by excluding everything else, because if we take on e3 now, after rook takes e3, it gets a bit dodgy because things start hanging, f7 is still hanging, our queen is hanging. If we give a check from h4, the king can start running to reasonably decent squares, and I guess the position becomes far from clear. And this is the final puzzle in the attraction set, which I think is actually easier than at least the previous two. Before bishop takes h2, you wanted to play rook d7. Yeah, that would also make a decent amount of sense. Let's briefly just return to this. If you start with rook d7, I'm guessing the difference is white goes maybe queen c1, and then in the same positions after we take and go g5, gf, bishop takes f4, we'll have the bishop supported by the queen on c1. That's my best guess at extremely, short notice to explain why we need to do those other things first. So yeah, this one really I don't think is very difficult. High Venus. Because this being a puzzle, you have to start looking at forceful moves first, and the forceful moves actually get there quite convincingly. We take on a6. That's actually okay. There's I know why. This is very clever. Basically, we're aiming for the same position, but the machine tells us that the move order has to be precise. And I guess the difference is if we take, and take on d4, bishop b2 is very strong, which for some reason will not work if we start in the other order. So we do this. Of course, if white takes on d4, we will simply take the bishop on a6, queen takes a6, we will give a check from e1, and then when the queen returns to f1, knight e2 and queen takes f1 is basically mate in 4. So bishop b2, and we sort of know that bishop takes a6 is wrong here, because we could have that position and the machine has already told us that this is a mistake. So let's try to figure out what is supposed to be the solution here. One move that exists here and would not have existed in the previous one is bishop takes g2. But I don't quite see yet how we refute king takes g2 in that position. We can also go rook d1, rook takes d1, and take on a6 only then. But that, once again, that we can do via any move order, right? So that shouldn't be the solution. We can also take on a6 and then go rook d1 check, so we don't need any kind of a finesse for this. But I'm not sure if it wins. It seems good, but I don't know if it wins. I'd be very tempted to play bishop takes g2, but as I mentioned, I'm slightly struggling to find a way to win at the end of it. So let's try just winning material by force, and yeah, okay, that doesn't work, and I guess that won't work either. Okay, so it's basically telling me that I have to play for mate here, which I quite like. I would actually prefer this position to be, to end in us giving some sort of mate. It's much more fun. Are we missing anything apart from bishop takes g2? If we go rook g4 straight away, I think white takes on b7. Queen b7, bishop c3. I don't see any refutation for that very simple idea. So what reasonably simple thing we could be missing here? I don't see it. My materialistic instincts tell me that we could try, as I mentioned, to trade on a6 and then go rook d1 check, but I assume there are some issues in the resulting endgames. I can even actually tell which issues. Once again, I can't move the pieces on the board, but if you imagine us trading on a6 and then trading on d1, white goes bishop takes f6, we have to take with the pawn because otherwise we get mated on the back rank, and then the knight gets picked up via checks from c8 and g4. So let's go bishop g2 and see what happens. Yeah, king g4, sorry, queen takes g4. Sorry, I'm losing my ability to speak. Yeah, we can play queen e4 or we can play rook g4 check. Rook g4, king h1, I don't see the follow-up. So let's start with this. That's incorrect. Yeah, this one is very tricky. I'm guessing there is a way to kind of end the game here, but this is what was bothering me about this entire line. I got to this position and I don't quite understand why it's winning for black. I mean, I can see it's good for black, but why is it winning for black? Some sort of knight e4, queen h4 type ideas are interesting, but I don't think they actually win. Ah, yeah, there's knight xf2. Very, very smart. Well done, guys. So the point here is if bishop takes e3, knight f2, queen f2, and queen e4 removes the pawn on f2, which could have gotten to f3, and then we give mate on the long diagonal. That's very, very smart. Nicely done by everybody who was saying that. So white goes f3, and I feel like we're sort of one move away from actually getting there. I guess we go queen h4, right? And then knight g3 check. And as you can see, it's not telling me well done because we made, well, I made about 5 mistakes getting to the final position, but we did eventually, by some kind of a team effort, we did get there in the end. Simon is not kidding with his courses. I can tell you this much. These are some very difficult puzzles. And we switch to, honestly, with the amount of time this has taken, we probably we'll see how difficult the Maurice puzzles are, and we might only be doing one set by Maurice, depending on how long it takes. And we start with this position, and the general theme of these Maurice sets of puzzles are, you can't see it on your screen, but it says sacrifices on e3 and e6. And these are, it's an interesting kind of a thematic collection of positions where the only thing that, joins them together is that the final blow is announced to be, something will happen on a specific square. And yeah, this one isn't really very difficult because in a practical game, you still, I think, find it. But in particular, when you know that this is a puzzle and they even tell you where to aim, it's not very difficult to aim at exactly that square. But I assume things will become more difficult as we progress. This is an interesting position where White's final move is rook takes e7. We obviously cannot take on e7 because that would allow queen h8 mate. And if we take on e5, the endgame after rook takes e5 is actually maybe not very clear, but we're definitely not winning it. At least not immediately. So we have to start looking at creating some counterplay. And if we're looking to create some counterplay, our very obvious starting point would be to play rook a1 check. And now, after king f2, as Wizard has already correctly pointed out, we currently have no checks apart from e4, e3 that make any sense. But e3 is extremely strong because if white goes king f3, we can go rook f1 check. If white goes king e2, at any point, we can go queen takes g2, and that should also win. And king takes e3, of course, attracts the king to the e3 square, and now we go... What? Ah! This is very smart. I like this. I was so sure I was correct, but actually if I go knight c4 check here, the king goes to f2, and if I take on e5 with the knight, rook e8 is still mate, which is kind of important. So we don't actually go knight c4 check, we go queen takes e7, using the fact that there is now a pin on the e-file, and queen h8 is not a legal move that white can make. Yeah, and people saying just take the rook, Archil take the rook, as the famous anecdote goes, which I will not be attempting to recreate on air, but some of you will have heard this before. The famous story of Archil Ebralidze not listening to people shouting things from the audience. What was wrong with rook e1? Nothing in particular, but if you go rook e1, I guess the king goes here, and if you take on e5 with the rook, white still has rook takes g7. And we haven't actually progressed very far compared to the starting position. How long will the stream be? Another hour or thereabouts, eccentric horse. Bishop e8 is the starting move in the third position. Once again, the fact that, you know, we were instructed to sacrifice things on the e6 square is giving it away a little bit. But if we do it straight away, black has bishop f7, which will solve the problems, at least in the immediate future. So I have a feeling that we have to throw in c4, c5 somewhere to include the bishop on b3 in the attack. But the issue with c5 is twofold. First of all, if we play c5, knight d5 exists, which closes down this diagonal again. And I still don't quite know how we're supposed to win there. Although now I think I figured it out. Actually, no, we don't actually need to play c5, guys. This is much harder than the first two. And I will actually let this, you know, boil for a second, and somebody... Yeah, there's already some answers in chat which are correct, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And the reason I like this one much more than the previous couple is that actually both decisive blows, as Maurice told us, both sort of happen on the same square. But the theme of this puzzle is not really, you know, you are being told to sacrifice something on e6, so go and sacrifice something on e6. It's to realize that both of your bishops on b3 and g3 aren't really playing so far, but there are ways to include both of them in the game. And we started by talking about this guy, when in fact this guy, the one on g3, will play the decisive role. So we play knight e6, we play queen e6. If black doesn't play bishop f7 and plays something like king h8, then we play c5, creating a threat of bishop g8, queen g8 mate, and we win. And after bishop f7, we just take on f7, and suddenly, the bishop on g3, after we have, once again, returning to the Simon studies on attraction, we've attracted the king to the f7 square, and now we get to play e4, e5, e6 check, and take on c7, and this endgame is quite straightforwardly winning for white. Well done, chat. This is a Sicilian position, some kind of a... although these days you're not entirely sure it's a Sicilian, but it probably is a Sicilian anyway. And once again, we're being told to sacrifice something on e6, so let's sacrifice something on e6. Big question for you, chat. Like, not a big question, but a starting question for you. What happens if black takes on c4 here? There is maybe more than one decision, but there is, solution, but there is definitely the more stylish solution that you have to see. Knight g7 is a strong move, but I think there's a stronger one, nihilistic. Yeah, knight c7 check is very, very good. Yeah, exactly. You play knight g7 feels like it's a more logical double check, but you actually are much better served by a double check from this square, because that interrupts the connection between the rook on c4 and the queen on the rook on c8 and the queen on c4, and then we just pick up the queen next move. So fe, we will take bishop e7, and in this position you kind of have to think a little bit, because if we naively take on d5 twice, queen takes c4, is a problem. So I assume we have to make some kind of a quiet move for the time being. The question is how quiet. We could try, yeah, double the rook with the queen, exactly. Yeah, we could. The thing that immediately occurs to me is that I would very much like this rook to be on e1, because of how much better connected my pieces immediately start looking if we do that. And in fact, I will just play this move because it just feels so right that it's one of those, you know, if this is wrong, I don't want to be right type situations. Rook e1, knight c5. If black takes on c4 here, we simply take on d5 now ourselves. And the fact that we are threatening queen takes e7 mate will be completely decisive. And after knight c5, or also I think knight f8, or knight f6, our solution actually against all of these moves is going to be exactly the same. Now the queen is hanging, so we don't actually have time, Neil, to play bishop g5 because things are unprise. But we can play knight d6, as Nihilistic is saying. And as I mentioned, we would have played knight d6 against any move of this knight. Knight d6, king d8, and I think the simplest is just to take on b7 and take on d5. I suspect other moves are also winning, but there's really absolutely nothing wrong with just picking up material here. Take on b7, removing protection from this guy, and then next move we just take on d5 and we win. And this one is the final one in the set. And I think in this one, the challenging part is to try and figure out what the counterplay is. Because even without the fact that the entire set is about sacrificing on e6 and e3, you just want to play rook takes e3 in this position. I also would like to take 1 second here to say that a5, a6 in this position feels kind of, you know, asleep at the wheel a little bit. It's not a move you should be making in this position. It's kind of inconsequential, and there are things happening in the center that you should be paying attention to. But as I mentioned, like, my biggest issue is to try and figure out, this is the counterplay. I was wondering what the counterplay was. So knight h5 check, we kind of have to take because, you know, nothing will be gained by us postponing this capture. So we take on h5, king takes e3, and now I want to play rook e8 check and then queen f4 check, but I'm wondering if there is something even more dominant that we can go for. But I don't think so. I think this is just too strong. And the white position starts falling apart here because this is hanging, and specifically the pawn on f3 cannot really be protected. So we solved this set, and I think we solved this set quickly enough that we can actually do one more set of... can we do queen g3? Yeah, I think we could play queen g3 as well. But I think the king probably starts running away in this direction. Like black, we probably start by playing rook takes h5 in response with white, and then we run as quickly as possible towards those types of squares. Not sure if it wins quickly enough. But definitely, I mean, move makes perfect sense to me, LVN. So, yeah, and even after rook e8, in fact, yeah, as Palted is saying, yeah, I think white absolutely has to go in this direction and not this direction. King d2, I think, is a much, much better move here. Black probably is still doing very well, but white is alive after king d2. As far as I can tell, white is still alive there. And white kind of looks completely busted to me after king f2. So yeah, I think king d2 is a much better practical choice. And our final set here is sacrifices on these two squares. And this one I actually like quite a bit because it also combines with the X-ray set we solved earlier. So who can tell me, I mean, bishop f6, because we know that we have to do something on these two squares, we know it's bishop f6, but who can tell me without me even putting the square, the piece on the square, what the threat is after we play queen bishop f6? Yeah, and yeah, I already see the correct answer in chat. And there's actually two threats here, and after queen a5 is a very smart move, by the way, because it doesn't solve the more forcing threat, but it solves the other one. Because for style points, you would like to play queen h6 here, gh, rook takes h6, And this tactic very much exists. There are going to be a lot of positions where this works. But with the queen on a5, which is a very good defensive move, it's just sad for black that it doesn't work. Black would have queen h5 in the end there, which is a big problem. Thank you very much for the sub, AK Pilot 007. So if we can't play queen h6, we are, with great regret, kind of forced to give mate in 3 with checks. Which is, of course, by far the most forcing threat that we are creating here. But against some kind of a quieter move, not queen a5, queen h6 would also be winning. Okay, so what do we have here? In this position, white clearly is doing very well because there's this really wayward knight on a6 which isn't participating in... yeah, it could be played, but there's queen h5 in the end, as I mentioned, Sven XD. It won't let me make moves on the board. But if you imagine us playing queen h6 here, black will take, we will take, and then queen h5 actually protects the h8 square, and we lose. So, as I mentioned, the idea exists, but you lose instead of winning, which is regrettable. Yeah, rook f6 looks very... I wanted to kind of build up... We can solve this easily because we kind of being instructed to sacrifice, but I wanted to explain why you immediately know that white is doing well. Basically, a lot of white's pieces are aimed exactly where they're supposed to be aimed. These guys are very close to the king. The knight on d2 can be joining the attack at any point with knight e4. And black has this collection of pieces which aren't really doing very much. But if you give black time to perhaps play bishop e8 and then maybe knight c7 next move, we could still have a game on our hands. But we could prevent this by just immediately going in very hard with rook takes f6, queen g5 check, and then, as I mentioned, knight e4 is a tremendously strong move, creating an unstoppable attack against the rook on f6, and now we can simply take and play rook f1. And black is completely lost. Here, if we didn't know it's about the f6 square, I think this puzzle would have been actually quite challenging because there's a lot of things going on here that, you know, kind of immediately draw your eye. But knowing the fact that we're supposed to do something with this square, it's really kind of easy to imagine why this is a good move, because we are creating this attack on the queen and the rook, more or less forcing black to take. And now we have successfully removed the pawn from the g7 square, and we can use the g-file. And also in this particular case, I'm pretty sure our point is to play bishop e4, attacking the pawn on h7, and also using suddenly the discovered attack on the rook on d7 to win a lot of material. And this idea of playing bishop f6 or bishop f3 in some positions to forcefully blast apart the pawn structure in front of the king is something that you should be aware of. It's obviously, in a practical game, you won't really, you know, get these things announced to you, but it's an idea that exists in a lot of situations, and it pays to be aware that this is something that can be done. Yeah, in a way, it's kind of more interesting to solve when they don't tell you what sort of the most important move is, but it's an interesting way of grouping the puzzles, which I haven't seen before, and there is plenty of all kinds of puzzles on the website, and to have some collections like this as an option, I think, is a good idea. So what do we think here? Yeah, there's already some solutions in chat, and I think they're the correct solutions. What website is this? I think the name of the Twitch channel should be a bit of a giveaway there. Artless Art. It's Kasparovchess.com. Black is strategically doing quite well, really. Black has the 2 bishops against bishop and knight. Very solid pawn structure, no weaknesses. Black is slightly behind in development and has this really awkward queen on f5, which is really the only thing that is not quite right with Black's position. If you imagine this queen somewhere around the b6 square, I would make an argument that Black is actually has a tangible advantage. Not a lot, but you definitely play for a win there with Black. But with the queen on f5, we can start chasing it by playing bishop g4. The queen actually is completely caught and has no other squares, has to take. And now we go knight f6 check, opening up the e-file by forcing the bishop to move away from it. And then we win all of the materials by this really logical sequence. And finally, our last position in the set is this one. And I'm kind of wondering about the f6 square, though, because I thought I solved it, and then I realized the entire sequence doesn't quite win. We obviously start by taking, and then I calculated a very simple line of taking on c6, queen takes c6, queen takes e7, rook takes e7, and rook takes d8, which absolutely does win. But the issue is, if we take on f4, Black can and probably should interpose with rook takes d1, either immediately or after bishop takes c6, offloading some of the pieces from the board and making it much more difficult for us to win. But we still have to do this. Like there's no way we are retreating with the queen here. So we do this. I was wondering about rook takes d1 even instead of ef, actually, but if the machine goes ef here, we are not going to argue. Rook takes d8, bishop takes d8 actually unpins things for Black, so I don't think that's right. I have a feeling this is a kind of a positional puzzle, honestly, and it's a curious one then, because I very much like the solution, but you normally, when you see a position like this, you are expected to win by force. You're expected to get to the position where your opponent will just resign. And I think this one ends in a position where you're much, much better, but your opponent is not going to resign for a while yet. So I think we take on c6. I think we take on e8 here. Okay. What am I missing? Okay, that's yeah, that's kind of smarter than I thought. So we go rook takes d1 here. What I wanted to suggest is, and yeah, don't challenge me just yet. We have one last position to go to, but the challenges on Kasparovchess.com expire in 15 seconds, and I can't accept them while I'm still solving. So while we're still doing this part of the show, challenges are kind of pointless. So please don't do that just yet. So I guess we take. I wanted to take on e8, then I wanted to take on e1. Black will take on an e8 with the king, and I wanted to play f5, f6 because of the pin on the e-file, forcing Black to take with the pawn. And this structure with these 4 pawns on the king side is probably going to end up costing Black the game, but that's nowhere near forced enough. So I think we take with the queen here, and then we go knight e5. And the point of this is that we are threatening to play queen h5 here, attacking the pawn on f7, which forces Black to take, such drastic evasive measures like queen b7. And now Black is planning to meet queen h5 with something like bishop f6. But we can play f6 here. Okay, not yet. I guess this is cleaner. Yeah, this is better. Yeah, we can. I wanted to do the same thing without giving a check first, but I guess this is cleaner. We can play knight d7 check and then f6 with the intention of meeting gf with knight takes f6 and then rook takes e8, which wins. This is actually a tough puzzle, and I like it quite a bit. And you have to in a practical game, you can sort of stumble your way to the conclusion there, but you can also, I think, logically navigate your way all the way to the end, calculating from here. Because as I mentioned, you absolutely have to take. So we get to this position, then you spot this line. You realize bishop takes c6 is at least a move you need to calculate. And then you realize rook takes d1 exists. And as long as you don't sort of despair here and you realize the attack still continues despite all of those pieces getting traded, because, you know, queen d5, queen h5, knight d7 check, all of those things are a very, very strong threat. If you get to this position, I think it will take you very, very little time to realize you're doing very well and are, in fact, just winning. This covers the puzzle solving stuff, so I will now change the scene, and you can, and in fact are very much encouraged to send challenges to Paul Borta on Kasparovchess.com. Let me change to the other view and start playing. Good luck to all my opponents. The question that often comes up is which time controls I prefer. I will take please no bullet, although like if I absolutely have to, I can play bullet, but I would prefer not to. And I kind of prefer 3-minute to 5-minute because we would like to get as many games in as possible, and 5 minutes are a little bit slow. But I will take 5-minute challenges as well if that's the only thing going. I chose not to play the symmetrical Grunfeld with c6 and d5 just to, you know, quote-unquote have some fun. I don't think a4 is a particularly strong move in this position. It's playable, but I wasn't really threatening to play b5 yet. And a4 is an incredibly committal move, which kind of ruins the structure on the queen side a little bit and gives me potentially a very nice square on b4 to use for my pieces. So I will play e5. I don't know if I'm supposed to play e5 straight away. But that's at least one way for me to try and immediately exploit what my opponent has done. I'm sure there are others. E4, yeah, a4 followed by e4 doesn't really look very right. I can immediately start simplifying here with ed4, knight d4, maybe even knight takes e4. But those positions often end up being very level, and I want to kind of be a little bit more adventurous here. So let's do this. d5 is semi-forced here, but then I get to land my knight on d4, and it's going to be quite annoying to try to get rid of it. Yeah, but white almost won connect 5. Yeah, b4 actually wins here. Let's see if my opponent spots it. They didn't, so the game continues. Big mistake. Yeah, they were one move away from actually connecting 5 and forcing an immediate resignation, but missed it. I'm obviously not going to trade the knight on d4 on my opponent's terms here. I want them to take on d4 themselves, and then the knight can go to either d5 or c5 once the e5 pawn vacates the square. Yeah, it's a difficult position to make a move here. I understand why my opponent is kind of tanking here, because it's just not very easy to make moves. And b3 is not a good move, but it's hard to criticize because the position was extremely unpleasant as is. But now after knight c5, queen e3 loses a lot of material to knight c2. And if you had to go back to d1, you obviously aren't going to enjoy this very much. You know, that's for sure. So yeah, a4 wasn't really that horrible, but a4 in connection with e4 and d5 is not going to work out very often in the King's Indian. Yeah, the ponies are doing a lot of work here. A lot of work. This is a full rook. I'm obviously, you know, it's going to be quite easy to convert from here when I have a full extra rook, and we can continue jumping around with the pawn. I could have taken on c1. In fact, after queen b2, maybe taking on c1 was smarter, but this isn't going to be bad either. It's still a full rook, so not really a problem. And now we get to take more material. So yeah, this is sort of the small window where you're supposed to send challenges. The moment that the game ends, this is where it is the best time to send the challenge, because I get to see it straight away. I don't actually have a particularly good repertoire against all things Grand Prix. I've never really studied it properly. It's not really supposed to be great when I haven't played d6 on move 2, so I'm trying to kind of demonstrate why that would be by, you know, compared to like the normal Grand Prix, I got to play d7, d5 in one move, which is a huge big deal. It wins me a very, very important tempo, and I'm now doing quite well. I could also not accept this pawn sacrifice, but this feels logical. And yeah, my opponent, after, you know, scaring me a little bit with the Grand Prix, is now, I think, playing a little bit too quickly, trying perhaps to confuse me with the tempo of play. But I've been around the block a little bit, so that's not going to work every single time. I tried, yeah, let's make some other first moves for a change. I don't really have a particularly well-defined repertoire when I play 1c4, but we'll just play something, yeah. Some kind of a double fianchetto is always a decent stand-in. Knight b7 is, I mean, it's a perfectly fine move. I'm not going to be, you know, sharply critical, but it feels like committing to developing the knight to d7 in this position, instead of perhaps playing c5 and knight c6, is a little bit too early. Although what my opponent is doing is perfectly sensible. It's just that my feeling is there are ways to try and punish what I'm doing. My opening setup wasn't, you know, particularly challenging, and you didn't really need to go to your default setups in reply. I'm not sure how, you know, how advantageous it is for me to try and win this bishop on e7, but it seemed like something I could do in this position, specifically because of how my opponent chose to develop, so I went with it. I don't think my, you know, advantage is particularly large, or even, honestly, I'm not even sure I have an advantage here, but it's a playable position. If I get to play, I don't know, e3, knight e2, knight f4, yeah, c6 is the first move in this game I really don't like from my opponent. The center wasn't really under any kind of pressure that could justify killing off your own bishop like this. I think this pawn pretty much every single time belongs on c5. There is no real reason why, yeah, my opponent can't play c5 later, but it's always going to end up being, I think, a bit of a wasted tempo. See you, pal Ted. And yeah, you kind of have to pay attention to tempi in positions like this, because I will play d3 first, just ask where this knight is going. Play Fischer random chess. I will probably play some next month, but as for playing that variant on Kasparovchess, I'm very reliant on people sending me challenges. If I get a Fischer random challenge, a 960 challenge as it is, I will accept it happily. But yeah, this is the issue. Yeah, while I'm playing, the challenge doesn't really get sent, so you are sort of supposed and expected to wait until this game finishes. I understand that. Those things vary from website to website, and since Kasparovchess is still very, very sort of fresh off the press, people aren't perhaps as used to how this works here as they could be, but it is how it works. This would have been actually quite an unclear position if not for the fact that, yeah, g7 is hanging, and also there is this family fork from d6. Wasn't the exchange just hanging there? I didn't really want to try and save it. If we go back to this game for a second, yeah, let me show the position. Like in this position, I can try preserving the exchange, but allowing knight takes e3 and then knight takes g2 just felt worse to me than what I did. RD born. I'll continue trying to play Sicilians. Yeah, there's obviously some issues with potentially, the stream perhaps lagging a little bit on your end. I don't know if that's true or not, but syncing the stream correctly with what's happening on the website is perhaps a bit of a challenge. I think I'm going to get mated in this game. I have a feeling I'm going to get mated here. Queen f3 I have not seen in this position. People have played a 4 f5 in this position against me previously, and it's very, very non-stupid. Queen f3 I am worried about much less, because I can, for instance, play queen b6. If long castles... Hang on a second, long castles, knight, bishop g4, knight d5? No, I don't think it works. And yeah, if castles doesn't really work because of bishop g4, as I assume is true, then my opponent is going to find it difficult to continue pushing in the center. The way not to lose any material here would be to play knight b3, but if you have to play knight b3, I'm already much happier, let's say, playing g6, bishop g7. And yeah, this position, I can start trading pieces, or I can just continue playing normally just with an extra exchange. I'm not really committed to... Actually, bishop c4, bishop b3 is very strong. I shouldn't have allowed this. This might become a game again, which is going to be a little bit annoying, but I will try to kind of contain the counterplay here. Rook g1 is a clever move, but I don't know if it has been worked out entirely correctly by my opponent, because knight g4 followed by bishop f6 is going to be quite painful, in particular because there is now this this pin. Now I can win more material. And yeah, for a second there it looked like there might be compensation for the exchange, but then my opponent played rook g1, which I think was a reasonably large mistake in that position, and the game is now firmly under my control. I'm trying not to accept the challenges from, in particular, people who have already gotten a game today. Just a kind of a FYI. If we've already played today, I am probably not going to, as long as I can remember all the usernames, I am probably not going to accept the second challenge from the same username in the same stream, because it feels like, people shouldn't really be hogging the mic so much. The trick is to have a completely forgettable username. Yeah, that's clearly the way to go, RD Born. And yeah, Eccentric Horse here is probably not getting a second game, but definitely getting one game, because I like eccentric horses. How can you not like an eccentric horse? Maybe including bishop b7 straight away was a bit smarter, but I have a feeling my opponent is not really trying to mate me in the center. I was kind of briefly worried about blundering some kind of knight d5 tactic and dying, but yeah, I think it's fair to say that my opponent's position when it comes to opening strategy is just to develop pieces to, reasonably good squares and not be overly concerned with, immediate tactics. And against that kind of a strategy, it definitely is much less risky to allow some very speculative sacrifices, because you can sort of assume speculative sacrifices are just not going to happen. I'm streaming from St. Louis, Mr. Carson. I'm in St. Louis for actually more than a month with all the events that are coming up. This should be a very nice position, but I wanted something forceful. I wanted to maybe make b5 before work, but I don't see how. So I will restrain myself and just make a normal move. And yeah, welcome to all the new viewers. This is, yeah, as the mods are correctly pointing out, this is Grandmaster Peter Svidler streaming for Kasparovchess.com. This is a new portal which has lots and lots of lessons by the best in the world, including Garry Kasparov himself, who's recorded a number of lessons which will be on the website in the near future, as I understand it. Lots of very informative things on the website. I'm not sure this is such a great move, but it's a decent decent move. I'm pretty sure. Can't be going, too badly wrong. One thing I was worried about after bishop takes a3 there is the inclusion of knight takes b5, but it's fine. And now we can win this pawn. Obviously, we can also win this one, but I think taking on a3 to begin with is going to be more efficient. And now we can finally pick up the other one as well, using the fact that we will overload the rook on e1, and after the trade we get to pick up the pawn on e4. And this endgame shouldn't be that difficult to convert, as long as I continue paying attention to what's happening on the board. One type of counterplay would be something along the lines of, yeah, exactly as my opponent is playing it, knight d4, knight f5, or knight d4, knight d6, and this actually is a little bit annoying, but there are ways for me to whoa, okay, that's unfortunate. That wasn't really supposed to go to g1, of course. It was supposed to go to h1, but misclicks are very much part of the game, and only got myself to blame for that. Congrats to my opponent, even though, I mean, clearly my position wasn't that bad there. Haven't looked at, Queen's Gambit Declined proper for quite some time, but I do have some idea of what's going on, so let's see. Continuing on the theme of playing a different opening every game, or at least, trying to play a different opening every game. This is the old, very, very classical approach to Queen's Gambit decline. These days, after c takes d5, a lot of people are actually playing knight takes d5 instead. And bishop e6 is, I don't think, is supposed to be particularly good. It's not going to be a horrible mistake, but you don't normally develop the bishop to e6 in these types of structures so early, because I think it gets... I can start attacking it with ideas like knight e2, knight f4. And just generally, I think there are more useful moves you can make early on rather than bishop e6. But as I said, there are actually some lines, in particular the lines which were popularized, I think. A lot of strong players started playing it more or less at the same time, and now Magnus Carlsen, I think, is the most famous protagonist there. People are playing a6, h6, and all kinds of lines like that. And in those positions, you actually often see the bishop coming to e6 later. So perhaps my, kind of extremely old school understanding of where the pieces go in these types of positions is becoming outdated as we speak. Here I will definitely go knight f4 though, using the fact that the bishop doesn't have... Having said that, bishop g4 exists, which I kind of blundered, but I can play f3, so it's not such a big deal. If I get to take on e6 and force f takes e6, I will be quite happy, of course, because then the bishop on d3 becomes very, very strong. It can go to g6 with a check if black doesn't castle, and if black does castle, the kingside position becomes very vulnerable for the future, because f e6 is not a move you particularly want to make in these types of structures. So I'll just kind of take first, ask questions later kind of approach here. Black definitely has some play on the queen side here. The game is not decided yet, but generally speaking, this trade almost always favors white. I'm not going to trade on e7 straight away. Black can continue chasing my bishop, but I want to only trade those bishops under the circumstances which are as favorable for me as possible. And c5, knight e8 followed by c5 is a very, I think, unfortunate sequence, because with the knight having gone away from the f6 square, I have this incredibly strong resource of queen g4, putting pressure on the black setup, and in fact the position kind of starts collapsing here. There is no comfortable way even of protecting this pawn, because queen b6 would allow knight d5 and queen takes d7. If you look at this position, queen b6 we can take, and queen d7 winning a lot of material. And knight d6, I will just start by doing this. It doesn't really sort of immediately win, but it gets very close, because we're a pawn up, and the king on h8 is actually going to be very, very weak for the rest of the game. We can start aiming the second knight towards the same squares. And now I have to trade queens, but I mean the position after the queen trade is so completely winning that, it's hard to feel bad about having to trade queens. Yeah, that's an interesting question, Yao FFF. I don't think Gary has been to Baku in quite some time. I don't know if that answers your question, and I would really defer to Gary on that topic. We've spoken about it, but sort of not in any kind of detail, but we have spoken, not maybe about that exactly, but about sort of surrounding topics. But I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I do feel quite confident in saying that he hasn't been to Baku in quite some time. I think in this position you're supposed to play hang on, with the knight on b7, on d7 already, I'm kind of confused, because before will allow some kind of knight c6 issues, potentially. These are very, very tricky positions not to misplay. I haven't looked at them in ages and ages. You can, of course, play h6, but at some point it became sort of general understanding moved from the positions with g4, h6 to trying not to play h6 at all in all kinds of situations. But I'm not entirely sure I can even do that anymore. So I will switch to some really, really old theory. You can always play knight b6 and kind of switch to that setup. But that setup, I think, became very heavily. It fell out of favor. Let's put it like this. It still exists. It doesn't lose, but it fell out of favor very heavily at a certain point because of how dangerous the resulting positions become for black. There have been some very interesting games played in that. I think Alexander Grishuk was one of the sort of leading lights on the white side of it, and Garry Kasparov himself was definitely playing these positions with great success on the black side of it. But I had some idea about this, but that was maybe 25 years ago, so I'm unlikely to you know, remember what I'm supposed to do here properly. I don't think my opponent is posing as many problems to me here as white does occasionally, but it remains. Yeah, this is maybe a bad move because I've allowed these types of things. Yeah, I think bishop takes b5 may have been very strong on the previous move. I'm kind of lucky it didn't happen. I'm not sure I was supposed to play queen c7. But yeah, bishop g5 and then bishop b3 back is obviously going to make my task a lot simpler. And now I even have knight takes b2, I think. Although there are still knight b5 things, but yeah, I mean, it's very, very difficult not to make this move. I don't know how good it is objectively. I have a feeling allowing knight takes b5 might be a mistake actually, but it's just so difficult to kind of stop oneself from making a move like that. We could even allow the queen trade, honestly, without the b2 pawn. Like, every single endgame is basically winning for black, so I don't feel like I need to... I don't know if freak out is a good description here, but like overreact to what's happening on the board, because... And yeah, you should always play e5 in this position, not e takes d5, because the more open the position becomes, the more completely all-powerful my bishops become. And now I'm guessing white just gets mated. I'm not sure about AK pilot. I'm not sure about that because, like, technically, it will just, I think, slow down the stream a little bit too much while I try to, you know, fiddle with the controls. I'm very sorry about, you know, I've actually actively looked for your name in the challenge list because you're a fresh sub, and it would be very nice to give you a game today of all days, but I can see we're having kind of technical issues connecting here, and I think I can even do this because there's no mate on the back rank because I always have bishop f8. Yeah, pre-moving bishop f8 would have been a bit of a mistake. I had a feeling rook c8 check wasn't coming, honestly, and one way I occasionally lose games of blitz is I make stupid pre-moves. But yeah, here I think I will be able to... I will be able to get there in the end. Okay, so let me actually try and wait for the AK pilot challenge for an additional couple of seconds, just because I would like to see if we can find a way for that game to happen, but it really doesn't really seem to be on the cards today. Sorry about that. This is Kasparovchess.com, Real Strategy Gaming. I gave a whole speech about playing a different opening every game, and then I continue playing the Sicilian, so let's play the Pirts instead. Yeah, that story might be apocryphal, but if it isn't, and it could very well be true, then I believe it, because Victor was very famously acerbic and funny, in a way that, for instance, very much appeals to me. C4 here kind of surprises me, because I thought we were playing a Pirts, and now we are sort of playing a King's Indian, but I think it's a decent King's Indian for me, so I will play e5 here and go from there. Yeah, I saw your challenge, Matt, 443, but I have a feeling we play. Once again, if I'm wrong about this, I apologize, because I have a feeling we played on one of the earlier streams. I kind of remember the username. We definitely did not play today, but I think we played on one of the previous streams I did for Kasparovchess, and there's a lot of people who haven't gotten a single game yet, which is why I have actually been choosing sort of absolutely brand new usernames today, usernames I have not seen before. If I'm wrong and we haven't actually played before, then it's on me and I apologize. But I'm pretty sure we played once. This looks like I'm making a great deal of progress on the king side here, but in fact, I don't know how quick my attack actually is. But I already did not really like the move before. I would have played, if I had this position with white, I would already be playing c5 without even the inclusion of the move before. Thanks for being honest about this, Matt. And yeah, I apologize. This feels like I'm sort of discriminating against people who got a game earlier, but there's a reasonably large amount of people who are only now trying to get a game for the first time ever. And I feel like it makes sense to try and play new usernames. Me, for example, yeah. Obviously, if I get to play rook, that's not how the rook moves. If I get to play rook f6, rook h6 here, I will be in a very, very good position. White should have done something more specific to stop that, because now, unfortunately, I don't think I give mate, because there is knight g3, like gf, rook h6, knight g3 stops immediate mate, but my position is still going to be completely winning, because I will win the knight on h2. And this probably allows just straight up mate. Yeah, we can. If this were an over the board game, I could announce mate in 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So we can do this here as well. Yeah, like mate in 4. In fact, I'm pretty sure it will be mate in 3, but you can prolong the game for one additional move here with white if you wanted to. Queen g2 is the current threat. Yeah, this allows mate with immediately, but instead white could play something like knight e3, and then rook h6, queen h1 would have been unstoppable. You are currently Grandmaster Peter Svidler. Yes, I am. I don't know who I'll be in about 15 minutes time when I'm finished streaming, but while I'm streaming, I'm definitely a Grandmaster Peter Svidler. So I was denied my Alekhine, which is very regrettable. What is the point of announcing mate in X moves? It's a flex. Basically, there's absolutely no point. It's a bit of a flex. People used to do it in the olden times as a way to impress, perhaps, like chess professionals, quote-unquote professionals, used to do it when playing against amateurs to impress said amateurs. Apart from that, there is really no practical reason for it whatsoever. Also, there's a very funny story, which, the topic of computer cheating in chess is obviously very prominent these days. And one of the earliest, very well recorded instances of somebody cheating with computers was a tournament in Germany in, I will get the date wrong, but somebody will correct me, I guess. There was a tournament in Germany where a guy called, I think, Alterman, he was playing Grandmaster Kalinichev in the last round. And he was rated like maybe 2400. He wasn't a bad player, but he was having an absolute like tournament of his life. And he was playing basically a game which would determine who gets the first place in the tournament. I'm kind of stopping knight g5 here. And he was playing against a grandmaster. And then in a position where I will not be able to remember the position, but I remember my feeling about the position. Basically, it was kind of clear he was better. But I think I would say, like, if you showed me this position and told me to assess it, I would say white is better. I wouldn't even say white is winning. And then he made a move, and yeah, somebody has already spoiled the whole story in chat. But yeah, basically he made a move, and he announced mate in 8. Which is something, like, mate in 8 is difficult. You know, mate in 3, where it's so completely obvious, as it was in my previous game, this you can do. Mate in 8 in a position with, like, heavy pieces on the board and lots of stuff going on is not easy. You don't really do that. But that was like it was in the innocent, period where, computer cheating wasn't as widely understood to be a thing. And he probably actually would have gotten away with what kind of became clear at that point that he was cheating, if he wasn't so proud of his, achievement that he announced mate in 8, and I think they disqualified him. Was there rook d1 instead of bishop b6? Maybe. Let me take a look. Yeah, but it doesn't win, right? You can play bishop b2, so the rooks get connected. It's a good spot, A. McDonald, but it wasn't winning as such. Does it count as hubris? Yeah, probably. Yeah. I think it mainly counts as somebody, getting overexcited and doing something stupid. But maybe, that could be one of the definitions of hubris. He had some ear device and a mic hidden in his beard. That's why GM started having beards. Yeah, definitely the reason. That is absolutely the reason why all of us are now unshaven. I don't know why this is going on. I will actually win like 5 of them if this game continues. I'm not lazy. Okay, the next one should be a rook, right? Ah, we can go e1 bishop mate, right? Can we? Hang on. I need to wait here, right? So like this. Oh, come on. Why you do this? I'm so disappointed. Like that was we were creating something beautiful there. I played chess, and then you went ahead and ruined it. And we got AK Pilot. So this is, yeah, I'm very happy about this. We can end the stream on actually getting a game against the new sub, which is what I wanted to, happen anyway. No, but that king a3 just kind of broke my heart a little bit. That was just, there was a masterpiece in the making, and it got completely destroyed. Yeah, this is like a very, very topical Sicilian. Magnus played this against me with white, and I played this against Nikita Vitugov in the Grand Prix just recently. I did not get a good position, though. So I'm not 100% convinced this is so great. Maybe I just didn't study it hard enough. I honestly did not expect Nikita to play the Sicilian, so I kind of decided on playing queen takes d4 in that specific line. I actually got a good position against Magnus in that game. I was completely winning. Against knight c3 here, I wonder if I'm supposed to play g6 anyway, because e4, e5 starts becoming a bit of an issue. The longer I postpone it, the more I have to wonder if e5 is a strong move. How do I get better at chess as a beginner? I think mainly, and the answer will sound kind of stupid and, trite and like a cop-out a little bit, but the best way to improve is through meaningful practice. I will try this. I don't think it's that bad. I have a feeling it's maybe not the best move in the position, but it shouldn't be unplayable. And by meaningful practice, I mean not just sort of spamming internet blitz games, but I mean, I have nothing particular against internet blitz. You can play internet blitz and still improve. Lots of people did, in fact. Like, I think most of the, let's say, the young American talents have, grown up on a very steady diet of extremely short time controls, and Hikaru was maybe the earliest super grandmaster who sort of, I wouldn't say that was the only thing he did, but he definitely played an unbelievable amount of internet blitz in his youth. This is not the time to play e5, though. Now that with the knight on d5, I can win a pawn in two different ways in this position. But yeah, what you should be doing when you play internet blitz, though, is you shouldn't treat it as an arcade game. You shouldn't treat it as, I will just make random moves quickly, and then I will be, slightly faster in the eventual time scramble, and, I will flag my opponents and enjoy it. There's nothing particularly wrong with flagging your opponents and enjoying it, but you should be trying to sort of think about your moves. You should be trying to figure out why you should be making decisions, and analyzing afterwards. In particular, because there are so many very convenient analysis tools on the internet these days. You don't even need specialized software if you don't want it. This is the way you improve, and in particular, sort of at the early stage of your career, nothing really works nearly as well as simply practicing a lot, playing a lot of chess. Alverman, yeah. I had a feeling I was getting it slightly wrong. Had a long hair, and there was a signal receiver in his ear, and he had a 4-digit digital transmission until I got it. Yeah. So there are some people in chat who remember that story better than I do. But the mate in 8, of course, is the most important part of that story, and that one nobody gets wrong because of just how absurd it is. Like it's just so weird to be doing this. Best way to learn openings. There's a lot of chess literature is definitely undergoing an absolute golden age right now. There's a lot of very good books being published on all kinds of topics. There's also very good opening courses being recorded for all kinds of websites. Yeah, I mean, it's never really been easier to try and improve at chess than it is right now. Lots of very interesting online projects are available, including, of course, the one I'm playing on right now, which has lectures on all sorts of topics by people like Anish Giri and Levon Aronian, and as I said, Gary himself has been to the studio recording some stuff, talking about chess, and listening to Gary talk about chess is unbelievably exciting. Like I say this as somebody who gets to do this occasionally, and every time I get to do that, it just feels like an absolute privilege. All right, so we finally, we ended up getting a game against AK Pilot, and I think that seems like a reasonably logical spot to end the stream, because our time slot is over. There will be more streams. I'm not sure exactly when, because obviously the tournaments are about to start. But there will be more streams on the platform, both by others. Vidit streamed before me, and I watched some of it. It was excellent, and I hope you enjoyed mine. And we are rating Andrew Tang, Penguin GM, and he is really good at everything he does. So enjoy. This is going to be a lot of fun. He's going to be about 10 times faster than I am, which is a nice change of pace, I think. So yeah, send my regards to Penguin, and thanks for watching.